Hey, what's up guys? Thanks for stopping by the channel. So this year at Watches and Wonders, a lot of the luxury brands focused on releasing new GMT models. So for example, you saw the left-hander from the Rolex GMT Master 2. Tudor released their new Black Bay Pro, which is a 39mm GMT. Even Longines knocked it out of the park. They released their Zulu Spirit GMT watch, and then Grand Seiko did a pretty good job as well. They put out some GMTs in their new 9 series cases. Now, staying on the topic of Grand Seiko, the only thing I don't really like is they continually go upmarket with their pricing. So a lot of their watches are approaching easily over 8,000 US dollars. But if we look back in the Grand Seiko catalog with this particular watch, this is the Grand Seiko SBGM221, and it happens to be one of the best value for money GMT luxury watches on the market, in my humble opinion. Just the level of finishing that's on this watch, I mean, the way that this dial, the hands, and even the case cut up the light and serve it to your eyeballs like sushi, it's amazing. So why don't we flip perspectives now, and you guys can actually take a good look at this watch up close in the studio. So now that we're in the studio, we can actually take a closer look at this beautiful Grand Seiko SBGM221. But before breaking down the specs on this timepiece, I'm really curious on what you guys think makes a well-executed GMT. Are you somebody who really appreciates having the 24-hour markers on the dial, or perhaps you would prefer to see it on a rotating bezel? Alternatively, does the date placement matter a lot to you, or even the GMT hand being discernible from the rest of the handset? It's also quite possible you're the type of person who really just cares about the GMT movement housed inside the watch. Is it a true traveler's GMT, or do you have more of a basic caller's GMT functionality here? Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comment section of this video. Or alternatively, let's take this conversation over to WatchCrunch.com. A new platform designed specifically for better watch conversations. WatchCrunch is the sponsor for today's video, and I'm actually happy to be partnering with them because I find that this is a resource that I personally missed when I started off my watch journey and YouTube channel several years ago. Now, this website is absolutely free to use, and signing up is quite easy and intuitive, and you can actually customize your own personal experience by selecting the types of watches and content you like to consume. Now, I should mention that WatchCrunch.com was developed by watch nerds specifically for us watch fanatics. So you're not going to be finding a lot of negativity or people living that flex culture on Instagram. And whether you're just starting off in this hobby or a seasoned watch collector, some of the conversations and connections you can make on this website are very beneficial and can inform your future decisions when it comes to buying watches, trading watches, or just sharing your thoughts on which watch YouTubers you want to follow. Now, I'm personally active on WatchCrunch.com, so why don't you drop by, say hi in my profile. Alright, in terms of actual dimensions for this watch, I measure the case diameter at 39.5 millimeters. If you take a look at the side profile of this case, the lug to lug, so the wingspan between my thumbs right here, comes in at 46.5 millimeters, and you can just see how well these lugs just drape down to conform to your wrist. And they even have drilled lug openings here if you want to swap straps on the fly. Note that this is a completely hand-finished case done with Grand Seiko's Zuratsu polishing, which gives you some mirror-free distortion. And while originally I thought this was fairly plain on the finishing side, you even get some nice bevels on the lugs as you get to the top portion here. And again, having this mirror-like finish across the case is spectacular, although it does smudge up a fair bit as well. Now, in terms of thickness, I measure 14 millimeters in total thickness, but keep in mind, this is about a half a millimeter thinner than the latest Tudor GMT Pro. And Grand Seiko does a good job breaking up the mass of the case. You can see that the case back is conical in nature. It does have a display sapphire case back showing off the Grand Seiko 9S66 GMT movement. And then the mid case is nicely polished, as I just mentioned. And a couple millimeters of height is added by this boxed sapphire crystal, which Grand Seiko has their super clear coating, so you get some beautiful light play on the dial. It's absolutely gorgeous. Now, the minor letdown in terms of the case dimensions is the lug opening here is 19 millimeters, so it's not very even. I really wish they just went with an even 20 millimeters because I have a ton of 20 millimeter straps. That said, I was able to go and pick up this Deluxe 19 millimeter strap, which I think complements the dial for this Grand Seiko quite well. That being said, this is the OEM brown crocodile leather strap that comes with the watch. It's not too bad. It's nicely bolstered, and I like the Grand Seiko deployment clasp here. It's got the Grand Seiko branding. Now, similar to the case, Grand Seiko did a fantastic job finishing the dial furniture. So all of the applied hour markers are multifaceted with Zuratsu finish to them. The handset themselves look like they're razor blades, and I really love the execution of the actual GMT hand, which is individually thermally blued in Grand Seiko Studio, so it's not chemically blued, and you can see how it just pops a radiant blue under certain lighting conditions, but it can also look quite dark, almost black, in low lighting situations. Now, in terms of the printed elements on the dial, it's executed flawlessly, and that includes the 24-hour markings just below the actual applied hour indices. And I think Grand Seiko does a very good job with the spacing on the dial as well, as the blue GMT hand almost reaches out to touch the 24-hour time, so it's very easy to read what your second time zone is. Now, the date complication is also vital to a GMT, and I really like the attention to detail Grand Seiko done for this particular watch, where it wasn't just a date cutout, but it's nicely framed and stepped down. There's even some subtle finishing, like having some vertical brushing that's done on the actual date disc. Now, I'm also happy to report that Grand Seiko did not cut any corners when it came to the GMT movement housed inside this watch, as it's their own in-house caliber 9S66, which pivots on 35 joules, runs at 4 Hz, has a very nice 3-day power reserve, or 72 hours, and is also thermally regulated as well as deviating no more between +5 to -3 seconds per day. Now, in terms of actually operating this movement via the crown, which unfortunately is non-screw down, only affording this watch 30 meters of water resistance, but you can manually wind it in the neutral position. In the first position, you can actually independently jump your local hours, and you can actually even cross midnight and change the date quickly that way, or you can cycle backwards, and it won't affect the movement at all in terms of the date change. And then if you do pop it out to the second position, you see I just hacked the movement, and you can set to any reference time you want. And here's a quick in-studio wrist shot just to show you how this Grand Seiko GMT wears on my 19 centimeter circumference wrist. That's about 7.5 inches if you're using the empirical system. And looking down the barrel, you can see it's not overly thick, and it will slide underneath a sweater quite easily, and even under some dress cuffs if necessary. So to recap, guys, I really do think that this Grand Seiko is one of the best GMTs you can buy under $5,000. I think right now it lists for around $4,600 US, and you can certainly get it cheaper on the gray market. And at that price, you're getting one of the best finished cases and dials out of any watch north of $10,000 in my opinion. The GMT movement in here is excellently done, long power reserve, very accurate, and a true traveler's GMT. I really like how they executed the thermally blued GMT hand. In terms of minor letdowns, I really do wish they upped the water resistance rating to around 100 meters, which is where most of my Grand Seikos sit in terms of robustness. And come on, Grand Seiko, I really wish they would give you an even 20 millimeter lug opening for this watch, so you can pair it up with a host of aftermarket strap options. But as always guys, I'd love to hear your feedback on this watch and your thoughts on GMT in general. If you do enjoy this content, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. It does help out a ton. And as always, I can't wait to catch you guys in the next video.